Elite Israeli units found themselves in an extremely difficult situation in one sector of southern Lebanon, where the terrain and carefully prepared defensive positions completely changed the dynamics of the situation. Analysts are already describing this not as an isolated incident, but as one of the most revealing episodes of the current crisis along the northern line of contact. Dear viewers, you are on the channel Info Vector. With you is Daniel Brooks, and today, we will take a detailed look at why the developments near Tebe and Qantara generated such a strong international reaction, how Lebanese formations managed to alter the pace of Israeli operations, and why even advanced digital systems showed limitations in difficult terrain conditions. The events of early April 2026 became a serious test for Israel's entire operational concept on the northern direction. The initial plan for movement toward the Litani River was built around mobility, continuous aerial reconnaissance, and confidence in technological superiority. However, near Tebe and Qantara, the situation began developing according to a completely different scenario. Lebanese formations avoided direct confrontation near the border area. Instead, they relied on concealed positioning and allowed Israeli forces to gradually move deeper into difficult terrain. At the moment when engineering vehicles and elements of the 890th Battalion entered a narrow corridor between hills and restricted access roads, coordinated activity began simultaneously from several directions. The main objective was not rapid movement, but limiting maneuverability and disrupting coordination between separate units. Analysts paid particular attention to the dense use of next-generation anti-armor systems. The systems reportedly used top-attack trajectories, significantly complicating the work of active protection systems. As a result, some engineering vehicles lost mobility, while the entire convoy became restricted in movement. To understand why the situation escalated so quickly, it is necessary to go back roughly 2 days before the main developments. That was when elements of the 98th Division began cautious movement from the border area toward Tebe and Qantara. According to preliminary assessments, the sector had already been subjected to extensive long-range operations, and it was believed that most fortified positions had been weakened. Because of this, engineering units advanced with relative confidence. Engineering special forces operating heavy equipment worked through the difficult terrain, preparing routes for airborne units moving toward dominant elevations near the Litani River. During the initial phase, almost no serious resistance was observed. Later, many analysts described this factor as critical. The absence of visible activity created the impression of a controlled environment. However, it later became clear that this was part of a carefully prepared strategy. By the morning of April 8, the convoy, stretched over several hundred meters, entered an area where coordinated activity began simultaneously across multiple sectors. Notably, the main focus targeted the center and rear sections rather than the front of the convoy. Such tactics are commonly used to separate units and reduce coordination between them. As a result, engineering vehicles became blocked, and further movement slowed dramatically. Additional pressure came from sniper groups operating from elevated terrain. This further complicated any attempt to quickly reorganize the convoy or secure safer movement routes through the mountain roads. By midday, developments near Tebe and Qantara became one of the most discussed topics among international military analysts. The key questions centered on how modern reconnaissance systems failed to detect preparations of this scale in advance. This was where one of the defining features of the current conflict became visible: the collision between high-tech reconnaissance systems and adaptive concealment tactics. Israel's military structure in recent years has increasingly relied on automated data analysis, unmanned aerial systems, and AI-assisted intelligence processing. However, the events in southern Lebanon demonstrated that even such technologies have limitations. The primary issue turned out to be the terrain itself. Southern Lebanon combines hills, rocky terraces, vegetation, and numerous natural concealment zones. Under these conditions, conventional digital surveillance becomes significantly less effective. According to analysts, anti-armor launch positions were hidden using multi-layer concealment materials designed to reduce thermal visibility. As a result, unmanned systems detected only natural terrain signatures. Electronic interference also played an important role. During the initial phase of the engagement, some tactical unmanned systems reportedly encountered communication and data transmission limitations. Because of this, frontline units temporarily lost the ability to maintain a complete operational picture. Particular attention was directed toward the Almaz anti-armor systems. Analysts note that these systems use advanced guidance principles and can reportedly adjust trajectory after launch, complicating the effectiveness of conventional active protection systems. At the same time, the large amount of incoming intelligence data created a form of information overload. While systems processed broader regional activity, small mobile groups managed to operate almost unnoticed close to the convoy itself. Military experts are already describing the situation as an example of how excessive dependence on technology can create an illusion of total control. In difficult terrain and against adaptive tactics, even advanced systems may struggle to respond effectively. Following the events near Tebe, many specialists began discussing the need to rebalance digital intelligence capabilities with traditional field reconnaissance and direct visual observation. Special attention has also been focused on the Radwan units, frequently described by Western analysts as among the most prepared formations operating in Lebanon. Their operational style relies heavily on small autonomous teams capable of quickly changing positions. Each group reportedly functions independently while maintaining coordination with neighboring elements. This allows rapid adaptation even under conditions of restricted communications. Underground movement routes also appear to have played a significant role. Analysts believe many positions were connected through concealed passages, allowing crews to relocate rapidly immediately after operating anti-armor systems. This mobility created the impression of a much larger presence than actually existed. Israeli units encountered activity from multiple directions, while the exact locations of the groups continuously changed. Sniper teams also reportedly operated with selective targeting priorities. Officers, communications, personnel, and heavy equipment operators appeared to receive the greatest attention. This approach is traditionally used to disrupt unit coordination and decision-making. At the same time, information operations intensified rapidly. Social media platforms were quickly filled with drone footage and battlefield imagery, dramatically increasing public attention surrounding the developments. Many analysts now argue that the informational dimension of modern conflicts is becoming just as important as physical operations themselves. Public perception and psychological influence are increasingly central components. By the evening of April 8, it became clear that the initial concept of rapid movement in this sector would require major revision. Israeli command structures temporarily adjusted the pace of operations and increased reconnaissance efforts before further movement. The overall operational approach also changed noticeably. Before even limited movement by small units, far more extensive reconnaissance and unmanned aerial surveillance began taking place. This significantly slowed the pace of operations, but also reduced the likelihood of similar situations developing again. Within Israel's military community, the developments in southern Lebanon triggered a broad debate regarding excessive reliance on digital systems. Increasingly, experts argue that modern technologies cannot fully replace field reconnaissance and experienced operational judgment. Additional public reaction emerged after imagery of damaged vehicles spread rapidly online. For Israeli society, such incidents always carry major emotional significance. Internationally, the developments also generated wide discussion. In Iran, the events were viewed by many observers as confirmation of the effectiveness of asymmetric deterrence strategies. For Tehran's regional partners, this became an important informational signal. In the United States, analysts increasingly began discussing the long-term sustainability of prolonged operations under southern Lebanon's terrain conditions. American experts have pointed out that extended reliance on elite units in such an environment creates substantial pressure both on military structures and on domestic public perception. Within Lebanon itself, the developments also strengthened internal consolidation around the idea of resisting external pressure. The informational impact of the events near Tebe and Quantra extended far beyond the battlefield itself. The main conclusion now being drawn by many international analysts is that the conflict in southern Lebanon is gradually entering a very different phase. This is no longer viewed as a short-term operation focused on rapid movement. Instead, it increasingly resembles a prolonged confrontation where concealed mobility, autonomous groups, and the ability to function under limited communications become decisive factors. The events of early April demonstrated how quickly the nature of modern conflict continues to evolve. Advanced technologies remain extremely important, but they no longer guarantee complete operational control. In the coming weeks, analysts expect the pace of movement in this sector to decrease further, while greater emphasis may shift toward long-range operations and more cautious reconnaissance. At the same time, the broader strategic environment remains highly complicated for all sides involved. Southern Lebanon continues to be one of the most sensitive regions in the Middle East, where every new development can rapidly affect the wider regional balance. We will continue monitoring the situation closely and separately examine any new developments if additional confirmations emerge. This was Daniel Brooks. See you in the next analytical review.